popular guy all over the media. Has been around for a long time. Business mogul, public speaker, and best-selling author, Jim Cathcart. Jim, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Rory. It's great to be on the show. Looking forward to this.
Great to have you here. Great to have you here, sir. I mean, you are a huge name. You've been around for a long time. Since it's your first time on the show, like I do with all my guests when they first come on, I like to get information and details about how it all started for you, your background, the different chapters you've been through in your life, and all this greatness, man. This is incredible stuff.
Well, you're generous. Thank you. It's interesting. Someone said to me last night at a party, they said, "Your name sounds familiar." I said, "Well, I've been using it for years." And they said, "What?" I said, "I've been using that name for years." And it took them a minute to get it, what I was talking about. And it's kind of like when somebody says, "Your face looks familiar." I say, "Yeah, it's the same one I've had since I was born." I've managed happily to be really, really blessed in my career. I started out as a kid in Little Rock, Arkansas, aspiring to someday be a professional speaker, not as a kid, a young adult. And, it didn't seem possible. I thought, well, there's no way that can happen. I can't just decide to be a professional speaker. I don't have anything to speak about, and I've never given a speech. But I'd heard Earl Nightingale on the radio, who was a motivational speaker back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s. And he was on 900 stations around the world with a little short 5-minute program. And I was sitting there as a government clerk in, prepare yourself for this year, 1972. Let that sink in. So I'm 26 years old in 72, born in 1946, so I'm 72 today. I'll save everybody the math. 26-year-old kid, I'm working at the Housing Authority, Urban Renewal Agency. I'm an assistant to a man who doesn't need one. So I'm bored to tears. I'm a government clerk. I'm making $525 a month. I'm 50 pounds overweight, 2-pack-a-day smoker, got a wife and baby at home, no college degree, no money in the bank, no connections in the community, and no hope of really making a difference in my life. And here's this guy on the radio, and he says, if you will spend 1 extra hour every day studying your chosen field, if you stay to that same field and study it for 5 consecutive years, you'll be a national expert. And I thought about that. And I did the math. An hour a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, 5 years, 1,250 hours. Well, Rory, if we studied anything for 1,250 hours, of course we would become a leading expert in it. And
absolutely.
That was the first day in my life that it occurred to me that I could make a difference, that I could actually sort of be somebody. And that rearranged my entire belief system about myself and my future and what I was going to do. My dad was a telephone repairman. I didn't have any role models that I could readily reach out to, someone who owned a business or was a high-level leader or something like that. Nobody I knew was wealthy. So I just started doing what the man on the radio said, spending an hour, sometimes 2 and 3 and 4 hours on weekends, an hour a day, every day, studying the field of personal development because I wanted to do what the guy on the radio was doing, but I had no idea what that meant. It just felt right. And so I became literally, in the dictionary, literally, fanatical about personal development for 5 consecutive years. Some of my friends drifted away. They didn't, I was too much for them. Other friends were drawn toward me because they too were interested in personal development and seeking success skills. And so we started collaborating, and before long I had pretty much like a mastermind alliance of new friends, and still was good friends with my older crew, but I didn't run with them anymore. And my life started changing fast. I got promotions. I got new opportunities. Things opened up. I became a trainer teaching other people's courses. I did 400 free training seminars, which I was leading, someone else's training seminars that I was teaching for the JCs, the Junior Chamber of Commerce. And I did that in a 2-year period. And by the end of that 2 years, man, I was loaded for bear. I knew what I was doing. I knew which direction I wanted to go with my life. And since that time, I've written 19 books, delivered 3,200 professional speeches around the world, been inducted in the Speaker Hall of Fame, the Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame, been president of the National Speakers Association. And next Friday, I'm leaving for yet another 3-week tour of China, my 3rd trip this year. So that's me.
This is incredible. I mean, it's your story is unbelievable. So,
I know,
what age,
and I'm the same way you are. Seriously, I look at that and I think, no, but it's all true. And plus, I play rock and roll and sing in nightclubs, and I ride motorcycle, and I do mountain trail running with a group of friends 3 days a week at sunrise to stay fit. So here I am, 72 years old, 30-inch waist. And at 26 years old, I had a 38-inch waist, and that was tight. And I've been in shape ever since about 1977.
Wow. And so at what age did you really start becoming successful? Early 30s?
29 or 30. Right about in there. The first year that I became a full-time professional speaker and trainer, just going out and doing seminars, workshops, and speeches for a living, I made $18,000. And luckily, my wife was a secretary, and she made $10,000. So between the two of us, we had 28 and a little baby at home. And we were just starting out, of course, so our expenses weren't much. But and this was a long time ago, so today it'd probably be double that amount. But still, it wasn't much money. So the second year, my business was really catching on because I was working so diligently about it, focused on it every day and learning from everybody I could possibly listen to. And at first teaching other people's courses and then developing my own many years later. So year 2, I made $28,000, and my wife had quit her job and worked part-time to help me. The 3rd year, I made $64,000. The 4th year, $89,000. The 5th year, $106,000. Then it went on up from there.
Wow. I mean, in those days, that was a lot of money.
Oh, it was. And I moved from Little Rock, Arkansas to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Lived 6 years in Tulsa, then moved to San Diego. And I've been in California ever since. Now I'm in Ventura County, just north of LA.
So, and you've written 19 books?
And I've got 7 in the works. 3 of which
incredible.
I'm co-authoring.
Absolutely incredible. Explain about... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead with the question.
I was going to ask you, what do most of these books entail, like marketing and sales, different sales?
They're all about how to succeed, and they focus on different areas. For example, one set of 2 books is called, and it counts as one, is called What to Do When You Are the Speaker, and it's 54 lessons on what to do when you're the person giving a speech or a presentation, and everybody's going to be looking at you. And then there's another book that I spent 9 years researching, and it's called The Acorn Principle. And I did that with a team of psychological researchers. And that's basically a self-guided tour of all the different things that make you who you are. And then I've got a book called Relationship Selling, which I wrote on my own long ago and then rewrote, and it's become an international bestseller. And also, it's become a video series, an audio series, a course, a whole bunch of things. And then I wrote one year before last called the Self-Motivation Handbook. There's 336 one-minute ideas on how to motivate yourself or others to do what needs to be done when you don't feel like it yet.
Wow. I tell you, man, you're incredible. And I'll explain to everybody, obviously you've made a lot of great investments in your life. You've done a lot of good deals in business. I've
also lost a lot
deals that you've done. Oh, of course.
Well, the most exciting deal of late has been 5 years ago. I was at the National Speakers Association convention. That's 4,000 professional speakers and authors, entertainers and researchers and people like that. And I'm a past national president of that group. And I was at the meeting in San Diego that year, and a colleague walked up and he said, "I'd like you to meet Dr. David Chu." And I said, "Hi." And he said, "David's from China, and he owns a speakers bureau in Shanghai, and he only books the top speakers in the world. And he wants to talk to you." And I thought, well, that's a high compliment. So I said, "Who do you book now?" And he said, "Well, Mark Victor Hansen, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul with Jack Canfield. Tom Hopkins, best-known sales trainer in the world. John Gray, who wrote the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus couples communication series. Brian Tracy, who's a motivational speaker, a friend of mine. Bob Proctor, who was in a movie called The Secret and talks about mindset for success. And he said, "Jim, I've been following you for a few years now, and I have a space for one more speaker in my bureau. I only represent 10 at the most, and I have a space for one. And Roger Dawson is number 9. He's a negotiations expert, and you're number 10 if you want it." He said, "I've got it down to 2 people, you and Zig Ziglar, and Zig's getting pretty old." And I said yes, and Zig a year or so later passed away, so it was the right choice for David too. And since that time, I've been in 20, this is 4 or 5 years ago, I've been in 20 cities in China. I've spoken to 20s of thousands of people, because when I go there, I speak to, like this next week, I'm speaking to 5,000 people for 2 days, 2 hours each day in Taiwan. And then I'm speaking to 1,000 people in Shanghai, and I'm doing a 3-day seminar on a cruise on the Yangtze River. So, wow. And that's all the Isn't Jim Wonderful stuff. But there's also an ugly underbelly side where I lost $300,000 by trusting a guy who basically was looking to exploit the fact that I was president of the National Speakers Association at the time. And he used that to get some other people to give him money, and to, we got to a point, and I turned around to him and I said, "You know what, our deal isn't working for me because I'm doing all the selling, generating all the revenue, and I'm not building any equity." He said, "Well, Jim, I didn't make a bad deal. You did." I said, "What?" He said, "The fact that you made a stupid deal was not my problem." I said, "Well, it wasn't a moment ago, but it is now, because we're done." And I had to walk away from hundreds of thousands of dollars. I had mortgaged my home to get into that deal. So that hurt. So I've made big, stupid mistakes, and I've made smart choices too. And thank God I've had 51% to the good, so that I'm ahead of the game instead of behind.
Yeah, I hear you. And I want to ask you, you've been featured in all the big business newspapers and magazines, and you've given speeches for the biggest organization, which is called TEDx, and you've probably shared the stage with some of the biggest names in the industry, right? Celebrities, athletes.
True.
You've been around everyone.
Oh yeah, movie stars, rock and roll people, and authors and presidents and people like that. One of my friends is the son of Ronald Reagan, Michael Reagan. I've had the chance to connect with some just amazing people over the years. Yeah, it's been something, that's for sure.
And so what are you doing currently, like present in the present? I mean, what besides? I know you're giving speeches all the time. Are you got any projects going on?
I do. Today I drove from Thousand Oaks, California to San Diego and back, which is about 7 hours behind the wheel. And I rented a car from Hertz to drive down to San Diego to buy a used Jaguar XK8, which is a real long, sleek-looking sports car. And when I went to Hertz, they said, "You've reserved a Chevy Malibu. Would you be interested in driving a Dodge Challenger?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be fine." And they said, "Okay, we have one that needs to go to San Diego, and it's good that you can drive it." And I go out to the parking lot, and it's a Hemi. It's a monster muscle car that they would normally rent for probably $400 a day, and I'm getting it for like $100. And I got behind the wheel of that thing, and it goes, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a good day. So I drove that fun car all the way to San Diego, and then turned it in and bought the Jaguar and drove it back. So I've got stuff like that going on, and then I'm working. I've got 2 video series, one in the U.S. and one in China. I've created 176 very short video lessons in the U.S. that I'm uploading into a system where people can subscribe and watch a few of them every day over an extended period of time. And they're all, lessons on the things that I talk about in my books. And then I have a similar series in China that I've done with Chinese subtitles where I'm speaking English and they're reading Chinese.
Very, very nice. And, I was just reading, you got inducted into the Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame in 2012. You also are in the Professional Speaker Hall of Fame, and you've gotten a Golden Gavel Award. I mean, you've had all these awards.
Yeah, that's from Toastmasters International.
Yep. And you've been listed as one of the top 25 speakers. And you've been listed as one of the top 25 speakers the last couple of years. That's incredible. Out of like thousands.
Yeah, like 5 years in a row. That's quite a privilege. I was looking at the list, and they were, they numbered them 1 through 25, and in the latest list that I saw, Anderson Cooper, the news guy, he was number 10. I was number 9.
Woohoo! Oh wow! Wow! Now that's incredible.
I know, because he's got, a platform that's available to everybody on Earth, whereas I don't.
We definitely have a lot of people that have questions for you. Dr. Branch, go ahead.
Good. Yeah.
First off, I'd like to say it's an honor speaking with you. Big fan of yours. A little bit about me is, I'm a writer. I also speak at international business conferences. It's funny you mentioned David Chu. He spoke a couple times where I was at on how to build relationships with China.
Wow!
And I love how he brings things down to, just like you. He brings things down to understandable levels. He came out and he said, in China, yes means no, no means maybe, and maybe means it will never happen.
That's probably true.
It was funny at the time. I was a dean of an international business school, and we were looking to break into China and how to get relationships there, and that gave me a clear path on how to do it. So he's a brilliant man, and it's interesting that you're associated with him too.
He has become one of my closest friends. Truly, we are brothers from another side of the world, as he says. And by the way, David and I are collaborating on a book right now. I own the trademark Relationship Intelligence, and we're taking the concept of Guanxi, which is basically relationship accounting in China, and we're blending that with relationship intelligence, the way I treat it, and probably have a book in the next year and a half. What a small world.
What a lot of listeners won't understand from that is relationships in China is everything. You know, when you talk about, well, we have contracts in America, and you were speaking about the one that you got burnt on in that, and we've all been there, maybe not to the tune of 300,000, but I've been burnt on contracts myself. And but in China, it's relationships. Relationships on how you form a relationship means everything in China. And I thought that was really interesting. He's a brilliant man. I can't wait to read your book, the one that you two are collaborating on.
Thank you. What was the school you were affiliated with at the time you met him?
Well, I work at Liberty University, Grand Canyon University, and at that time it was North Central University. So
outstanding.
Yeah. Actually, we met up in Toronto.
Love it.
He was affiliated with Canadian, the Canadian School of Technology, dealing out of Beijing, China. So I thought that was interesting. He helped Harvard actually get set up over there as well, advising them. So I thought that was really interesting. Exactly.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Can't wait to read your book on that. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And if anybody ever wants to do business in China, I'd suggest reading your future book that's going to come out. So,
thank you. Yeah, just stay tuned to Cathcart.com, and I'll have it posted on there.
Johnny in New York, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, to tag on with the other guy, Mr. Branch, like, it's an honor to be speaking to you right now, man. If my father finds out who I'm talking to, he's going to lose his mind. My father has all your books from the 80s, and the 90s. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy that I'm talking to you right now.
Give your father a big bear hug for me.
I will.
Do that.
Yeah, so one of my favorite books that you did, I forgot who you did it with. You did it with other people, I think Getting Things Done. And you did it with some other people or something like that.
Yeah,
but that
was
one of my
multi-authored book. Yep. Yeah, Brian Tracy and I were on the cover, and some other people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for remembering that. Cool.
Yeah, that was one of my really favorite books that I read out of your collection. And so I think one of the biggest questions I have is, since you're doing the motivational speaking and everything in that nature, when it comes to the economy, like we know that the economy, is doing well or whatever right now, but I feel like the millennial generation is really somehow struggling with that getting things done attitude. It's kind of like it is what it is, and people are staying home with their mother till they're like 30 years old. They're not doing anything. They're not creating like past generations, and it's just like what is going on?
By the way, shame on mom for letting them stay home until they're 30 years old. My mother mother and dad let me come back for 3 months one time when I had a financial setback as a newlywed. But the idea of me being there at age 30 for an extended time, they would have said, "Boy, you can sleep in the backyard, but don't mess it up." Man. Yeah,
I love it.
The question, what is it? What's going on with the millennials? Well, our society has become way too willing to support neediness. When I was growing up, and when my parents were growing up, America was about self-reliance. When you were born, you had a job, and that job was to form the right habits so that you could become independent, because you're going to be dependent on your parents until you had the right habits. But once you got those habits formed, you could make your own choices and go your own direction. And if you were not self-reliant by the time you became an adult, then you were a drain on everybody else, because somebody else had to take care of you. And I think we need to start that all over again and make it not just something we understand, but something that we talk about as so important that it comes right in next to food on the priority list. Become self-reliant. I told my son, he said, Dad, what if I don't, he's way past this now, he's 48 years old, but when he was in college, he said, what if I don't graduate in 4 years? I said, that's okay. I said, but at the end of 4 years, I have graduated and I'll have the checks to prove it. So I'm sending you to school for 4 years, and that's it. If you don't get it done in 4 years, you can go back 5, 7, 12, 25, but you're paying. And he said, I get it.
Right.
And my wife said, but what if he doesn't graduate? I said, what, do you think he's going to die? No. Plus, I mean, whoever got the idea in the first place that, hey, Rory, I want you to build your muscles. Let me lift some weights for you.
Exactly. It's
right.
So true.
Yeah. We become strong by dealing with adversity. And if there is no adversity, then we don't become strong. You have to have resistance. And you have to be confused and afraid. And you have to be uncertain. And you have to encounter things that completely surprise you and you go, oh, my God, what am I going to do? And find your way out of it. Otherwise, you never have confidence.
Kevin,
wow.
Go ahead. Do you have something else to say, Johnny?
It's so great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Some background on me. I'm a young leader starting my own kind of field in politics, working on building a community, disseminating a platform and ideology, just building the trust and motivation within a group. And I'd love to hear your insights, you being such an experienced and well-rounded man, especially when it comes to relationships. I'd love to get your insight as to what you believe are some of the highest virtues in building trusted relationships. If it's either being able to communicate or motivate, or having just strong moral values, or just being a highly moral person.
I have a good answer for you. First off, we need to define what is a relationship, because most people don't have a quick answer. The reason I say that is I've asked thousands and thousands of people what is a relationship when I was on stage giving speeches, and I've never gotten the same answer from a majority of the audience. So I came up with an answer. Here's what a relationship is: a direct connection between people in which value is exchanged. A direct connection between people, not things, not organizations, because you can't have a relationship with an organization. You can only have a relationship with the people that are the organization. So a direct connection between people in which value is exchanged. Now, value can be friendship, it can be fun times together, it can be support and encouragement, or it can be money. But if there is no exchange of value, then the relationship doesn't exist. So you can have plenty of transactions with people where, good morning, how are you? Fine, how are you? And that's not a relationship. That's simply a transaction and exchange of ritual. But a relationship requires that somebody either say, here, let me help you with that package, or, hey, I've got an idea that I think you could use, or, what's going on, man? It looks like you're hurting. Tell me about it. Some kind of value exchange has to take place in order for that relationship to start forming. And it forms like a little strand of spider web, and then another and another, until it becomes as strong as a cable, and even a major disaster wouldn't break it. So that's the way relationships are built. And if there is no integrity on one side of the relationship, then there is no future on either side of the relationship. So you've got to have integrity as a person. You've got to, at the core of everything else, be willing to do what you say you will do, and to make things right if you mess things up. And there is no relationship when one person is simply an enabler and the other person is an entitlement junkie. That's not a relationship.
Very, very well said. I do want to go to Dr. Bussler. Go ahead.
Well, a lot of interesting conversation here, a lot of very, very interesting backgrounds that people have. I think it's good that we're able to communicate well with the audience and with each other and share a lot of these experiences. Some of your guests here have had some excellent achievements, and to get some advice from them for everybody, I think is excellent. And everybody seems to have a good view here, taking very traditional values and conservative values that most of us have. And as we know, the political climate today is that it's very difficult to keep a lot of those values.
Indeed. Come with me to China. I can't wait to see what's happening this time when I get over there and they say, hey, what's up with all the tariffs? And I'm going to say, sorry, I don't talk politics. Nope, not in China.
Yeah, that's probably the best position to take, trying to discuss what the U.S. is trying to do with the Chinese relationship is extremely difficult. And coming from the American side, being in China, I can imagine how difficult that'll be for you. So I imagine when you go there and you're certainly an expert in your field and people want to hear it, it's probably a good idea for you to stay a little bit away from politics and just stick to what the subject matter is.
Yep.
Let's go to Mike Peters in New York. Mike Peters, go ahead.
Hey, Mike. Hi, how are you this evening? And thank you so much for joining us here. But I was going to ask something right along the same lines. What you mentioned earlier was the political situation. Have you ever had, as you travel internationally, a government or a political party give you guidelines on what you can and cannot speak about?
Good question.
Yes. Yeah. And in Iran, a colleague of mine had been over there speaking. He's from Australia. Yeah. And he said, hey, I've told him about you. You should take this. It pays really well, and they pay you in a bag of cash at the end of the speech. And then, I told him, I'm really not interested in going there. Sorry, not even for a big bag of cash. And then he called me like 3 months later, and he said, hey, I was just released from prison in Iran. I went over there and I was speaking, and in the middle of my speech, officials came forward and ended my speech and took me away, interrogated me for hours, put me in jail, and I spent days in jail, in prison, basically, being interrogated, and finally they released me, and I was able to get out of the country. He said, so be glad you didn't do it. Holy
Mike, there's something echoing. Is that your end, Mike? There's something echoing.
No, I don't have a speaker on or anything. It's not me.
I
don't have any speakers. I've got headphones on. You're lucky you didn't go. You're really lucky you didn't go. And I was thinking something like that would be unbelievable. I mean, but Europe and the rest of the countries, you have no guidelines. They're not coming down on you saying, giving you a list.
That. Even in Venezuela, which was during the Hugo Chavez era, I was down there speaking to 800 people at a big international conference, and the only problem I had was customs officers at the airport tried to get me to give them all my American money in exchange for Bolivares. They told me it's the law; you have to do it. And I said, well, then I'll just get back on the plane. And they said, well, no, come with me. And they were going to take me to someone else who was also in on the scam. And we saw my host just the other side of customs. And I said, hey, there's my host. And I walked over, and that resolved the whole thing. So I was able to get into the country, give my speech, and then get out. But going out, they tried to do it again. I've never been so happy to leave a place. Beautiful country physically, and the people were wonderful, but what an awful government.
It could be an adventure. I could see where it could be an adventure and very dangerous at the same time for even motivational speeches. You're trying to help people and everything else, but even that will be twisted and turned.
I know,
for
that's
political
the
reasons.
irony of it all. You know, you're there, given from your heart, given with integrity, and people are putting spin on it, and that's sad. Yep.
You know, I've got a pin in my collection. I'm a bit of a historian. The Culture Camera. It was a department under the Department of Propaganda in Nazi Germany, and I have one of the pins from that organization. I'm dealing with a collector trying to get an ID book from a gentleman that had different sections to it. One of them was regarding speech. One of them was art, music, and there were inspectors that could show up at events. And with their ID and that pin, they could shut it down and get you arrested immediately if they felt it was against party guidelines. So people don't realize, Americans don't understand that, what we have here in this country and how lucky we are. They just don't get
I know.
it
And the thing is, that was the government they had to be afraid of. You know, people talk about, well, we shouldn't have First Amendment or Second Amendment rights. People shouldn't have guns. Well, excuse me. If people aren't able to own guns and government is, then the government owns you.
Law.
Yeah, and government's not always honest. Matter of fact, has it ever been? Yeah, maybe it's been honest once or twice. But government, no.
No, I agree with you. Well, God bless you and keep up the great work, and I hope you have a safe trip.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Thank you very much. You too, Mike.
We do got to let Jim go here in a second, but I do want to give Gianni go ahead, and then we got to go to a commercial and introduce our next guest. But Gianni, go ahead.
Cool.
So I would say when it comes to motivational speaking, also, how did you get a start in that? Like, what made you want to get into that, and like, how did you even get like the gigs? Like, were people just inviting you, or were you like starting on? Like, how did that happen? Because I mean, there was no social media at the time. So
there was no social media at all. There was telephones and snail mail. I joined a group called the JCs, the Junior Chamber of Commerce, which still exists today, but back then had 350,000 members because of the baby boom. And the JCs are like Kiwanis and Lions and Rotary and all that, but they're for young people. So it's for people under 40, and the purpose of the JCs is not community service, even though that's what they do. The purpose of the JCs is leadership training. So every time you do a project in the community to raise funds for the March of Dimes or to build a shelter for the homeless or whatever it is you're doing, you submit a plan in advance. You have it approved by the leadership team in your chapter. You conduct the project. You evaluate it afterwards, and you submit that, and it gets a chance to win an award. So everything they did in the JCs was done to teach a leadership skill. And I was the guy in charge of the leadership training programs. And so I would facilitate the group discussions talking about leadership, motivation, public speaking, sales, and things like that. And I did that on a volunteer basis after work and on weekends. And like I said earlier, in a 2-year period, I did 400 of those meetings for free on my own dime, in my own car, after work, go home, have dinner with my wife and my little baby boy, and then get in the car and go to a JC's meeting in some remote town in Arkansas. I went to 280 different towns in Arkansas, some of which were no bigger than probably the studio you're recording this or broadcasting this from.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, amazing story. We do got to go to a commercial, but Jim, we want to have you back very soon. Please tell everybody where they can. Please tell everybody where they can buy your books and connect with you, social media, all that good stuff.
Okay, my books, just go to Amazon.com and type in Jim Cathcart. For social media, I am all over the place. Likewise, just Jim Cathcart. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. And my website is my name, Cathcart.com. So keep it coming. I love that you had so many people calling in. Thank you, Rory, for inviting me to be part of this.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely have you back soon.
Take care.
All right, you too. We will be right back, everybody. stay tuned. A lot more to get to.
Hey, it's Jeff and livemediaguide.com.
Is video a part of your strategy for 2019? Hi, I'm Rob Hicks with Hixvideo, your remote video production specialist. Using equipment you already own, I help you deliver high-value videos to your audience. From interviews and demonstrations to online meetings and trainings, I work with you to shape your stories and subjects that demonstrate your subject matter expertise. If you're a product specialist, sales executive, or business owner, we make video production simple and affordable. We do this so that you can make videos on a regular basis, whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly, to communicate about the topics and discussions that are important to you, your audience, and your business. To make your videos, we use HD video conferencing that allows you and your guests to connect to our studio from your home or office using your laptop, phone, or tablet. Once you and your guest have connected to our studio, we do all the rest. We take care of the TV graphics, the intro videos, the outro videos, the music, the behind-the-scenes production. Everything that it takes to either live stream or locally record your video for post-production editing to social media, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it. If you're tired of seeing the empty balloon commercials that are being made by your competition's social media experts, give me a call. I work directly with you, the subject matter expert, to help shape your story and ideas in a professional and polished manner via video. If you're ready to take a deep dive on your expertise and showcase the essence of your business via video, give me a call or connect with me online. I'm Rob Hicks with Hixvideo, the remote video production specialist, the doer's resource for online video production.
Rory Sauter Show, coast to coast, worldwide. Listen to it in 23 different countries on nearly 70 online platforms. And everybody, if you miss any past clips, past episodes, or need 24/7 breaking news coverage, please visit our media site, thenextgenusa.com. And remember, in the coming weeks, we will be having many notable people that will be doing their own shows on the network. I do want to welcome to the show, his first time on the show, very successful, very popular guy, real estate mogul, successful businessman, political commentator, and activist, Barry Nussbaum. How are you, my friend? Welcome to the show.
It's a wonderful evening. Thanks for having me, and I'm doing terrific.
Well, Barry, since it's did I pronounce your last name right? It's Nussbaum, right?
You know, my mother used to say Nussbaum. My father used to say Nussbaum, so you can't go wrong, and I'm not going to pick between my parents. So either one of those, and you're totally cool with me.
Perfect, man. So your first time on the show, Barry, I want to get, your background, all the different chapters you've been through, your career, all the various accomplishments that you've achieved in your life. I know you have a hell of a story.
Well, it's nice of you to ask, and again, thanks for having me on. I've followed your career a bit, and you're doing some great work, and I appreciate you, as all conservatives do. My career has been a myriad of things. I'm going to be addressing a high school class here this week for graduation, and the reason I mention it is that I have been thinking about the rules of success that have worked for me, and so it's been quite several days of sort of reflection of my life that got me to where I am. And I would say without a doubt that anybody that's an American, or in my case, a first-generation American, my parents were immigrants, that has made a success of themselves in the greatest country that has ever been on planet Earth owes a debt back to this country. And so I'm at that stage in my life where I'm incredibly grateful for the successes I've had, and the rest of whatever time I'm given here is about making sure that got what was valuable and available for me growing up through my college and graduate school years and my business career that allowed it to be a success remains here for my children and my grandchildren and our grandchildren's grandchildren. And so for me, the rest of my career is about making sure the American dream is available for future generations. That's sort of where I'm coming from.
Well, yeah, and you're a guy of many trades. You've done a lot in your life. You've been very successful in real estate. You've done a lot of stuff in political activism. You've done quite a bit. Explain that.
Well, my career has had two tracks running parallel since college. I went to a school that is renowned for the last, say, 50 years as being a conservative, constitutional, you better be ready to work your ass off institution. And I was very fortunate that the professors I had in a very small environment taught me the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, what were the founders thinking. So I started my career in politics, ironically, working in the legislature in Sacramento while I was still in college. And then after college, that career continued for 40 years, while at the same time, the dual track was I went out into the business world and made something of myself. I've had a lot of different business experiences. I was the youngest sales manager in the history of the National Basketball Association. That was a wild trip for a young man.
NBA?
Of 22 and 20. That NBA, yes.
So wait, say that, say that again. That's pretty impressive. Say that again.
I was the youngest sales manager in the history of the National Basketball Association. I was 22 and 23 years old, happened to meet the right people and stumbled into an opportunity that I was able to put together on the simple offer to the NBA owner of the team, which happened to be the Clippers, by saying, don't pay me a salary. Don't pay me a guarantee. Give me a commission. I'll earn the money for you. And it turned out to be a terrific opportunity, and I got to know a number of superstars around the league, and I spent several years traveling with the team and meeting the players and the managers and the coaches and the scouts and the agents and so on, until I got to the point that I didn't want to be in the professional babysitting business anymore, but I really enjoyed it. My real estate career has spanned about 40 years in a number of states across the country in the apartment business, offices, development, housing, renovation. We still have quite a bit of holdings in a number of places. But those things are means to an end. And what I mean by that is, what are you going to do with that? It gives you power. Power gives you the opportunity to make choices. And my choice is to invest the time I have, the influence I have, and the ability to communicate that I have to teach people about America and the truly, in my opinion, and I think you would agree with me, Rory, the threats that are facing America that are unprecedented in American history, certainly over at least 100 years.
Wow. Very, very, very powerful stuff. And, you know, with your political activism, you know, you've been going on a lot of shows for quite some time. You've been giving your insight for many years. Explain that a little bit, that part of your career.
Sure. You know, the way it started for me, I got active in politics by writing and researching legislation in Sacramento. And I didn't know anything about politics. I was a young, naive kid, and I didn't know Democrat from Republican. I didn't know liberal from conservative. My education had taught me American principles, but I didn't understand that those principles are very rarely incorporated into political strategies and legislation. In other words, the gut morality for most politicians is based on self-advancement of their career, re-election, and what's the next thing they can run for. And so I went into that process very naively. I ended up writing speeches for the GOP in Sacramento. I actually worked on the other side of the aisle from Jerry Brown when he was governor the first time. And over the course of that career developing, I ended up working for the governor of California, actually 4 different gubernatorial terms. I worked for 3 Democratic governors and 1 Republican governor. So as I like to say, I go both ways in politics as long as I don't have to compromise my values. And I ended up with one of the most powerful jobs in the state of California for about 13 years, which is the administrator for the governor, working directly for the governor, administering the most successful racetrack in America and the most financially successful fairgrounds, which is in San Diego, the Del Mar Fairgrounds. So I ran the racetrack, which had a handle of about $500 million a year, and the fairgrounds, which had an annual budget that I used to sign off on at about $85 million. And I took the politics out of it. And I used to see people making decisions strictly on sort of a team loyalty. In other words, if you were a Democrat, then Republicans suck. And if you were Republican, then Democrats suck. And I tried to lead based on policy rather than this idiotic methodology that most people have, which is, I love the Dodgers, I hate the Padres, and that's the way they treated politics. So you end up with good and bad in both parties. And when I actually started, the first governor I worked for was Gray Davis, who was kind of a moderate Democrat, and he used to introduce me at functions with national politicians and donors. In fact, I was at the National Democratic Convention in Los Angeles in the governor's box when Clinton got the nomination, and I was introduced to everybody as his conservative in his cabinet. So, which I took great pride in, because to me conservative meant you understand why there's an America and what the Bill of Rights is and what the constitutional guarantees are and so on. Whereas most of the people that were supporting him were about the government needs to spend more money, it needs to provide more services, it needs to pay for things that I don't have the money for or the inclination to earn myself, and I was the other guy. So ironically, because I wasn't partisan, I was more philosophical, I managed to stay there for 13 years until I was dismissed in my fourth term by Jerry Brown, which I still carry as a badge of honor because my political philosophy was intolerable to the then governor of California. So I did that, and that branched into being in the White House with a couple of different presidents and advising on political campaigns and gubernatorial campaigns and senatorial campaigns and congressional campaigns. Yeah, I sat with the prime minister, several prime ministers of Israel, and I've been in the Oval Office with the president on both parties, by the way, because I'm issue-oriented rather than partisan, and I think that allows me more accessibility because I'm not wearing a Republican or Democratic hat. I'm more of a political philosopher that wants people to understand why this country is so great and what the values are and what we must do to protect them. And quite honestly, most politicians are, as I often say, what do you do the day you get elected, Rory? You celebrate, you have a cocktail, and then you plan your reelection. And literally, I've been in victory parties where that literally takes place. How are we going to be reelected? How are we going to put together the campaign? And I'm there saying, hey guys, the election was 7 hours ago. We're already running for reelection, and that's the way it is in America. For many people, not everybody, but most.
It's so true, and you've done so much. And what different campaigns did you work on? Some of the different presidents you advised.
Well, a couple examples are when Mitt was running. I ended up being fairly close to him and the people around him on the issue of the American-Israel relationship, and that's sort of my specialty. It's maybe the most important international relationship that America has. Israel is the front line against terror. It's the canary in the coal mine against Islamic terrorism, and Mitt really got that. On the subject of understanding the value of the strategic relationship between the United States and Israel, with the exception of Donald Trump, I have never heard of a national leader that got it better than Mitt. Now, you may have many disagreements with Mitt on other policy, but that was my issue with him, and that's what we talked about. So, sadly, on the night that he lost quite badly to Barack Obama, I spent the night that evening with his family, and we watched the returns come in, and it was a sad night, I can tell you that. On the other hand, there have been other campaigns that I've worked on where I know I had the influence of that subject matter because that is my, I'd say my sweet spot and what I want to spend my time on. So I have connections throughout Israel, within the government, within the military, within intelligence, and so on. My kids are there, and it's a very, very special place, and it's very, very important to the United States. More so than I would say the vast majority of Americans have any idea.
Yeah, and how speaking of the Middle East, I mean, what are your thoughts on everything that's going on, all the madness? I mean, Christians are getting killed every second. You have Jews getting targeted every second. And I know this is one of the things that, in a lot of ways, you specialize in is some of the stuff that's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Rory, and it saddens me a great deal, and it's a reflection of the media here in the United States. Christians are being destroyed. And I mean that word literally.
Speaking in exact numbers, there has been in the last couple of weeks during however you pronounce it, I think it's Ramadan. They have been killing hundreds and hundreds of Christians. It's crazy. Go ahead though. Sorry.
Yeah, that is exactly, you're very intuitive. That is exactly what I was going to address. So in Ramadan, which is going on just recently for Islam, this is Quranic, from the Quran, if you commit an act to advance Islam during Ramadan, you get, this is kind of a loose translation, I'm putting it in air quotes, bonus points. So if you raid a Christian village in, say, Africa, and you kill everybody that's praying in that church, bonus points, baby. Bonus points for killing Christians during Ramadan. Okay? The Christian communities throughout North Africa and in the surrounding countries, Syria, Iraq, Iran, especially Africa, have been wiped out, slaughtered. But you know what? With the exception of, say, activist pastors in the United States and people like me that are screaming into the forest, mass media isn't reporting it. It's not news. Christians getting slaughtered, and I mean men, women, children, lined up and machine gunned or hacked up with machetes because they don't want to waste bullets. People don't read about that. What happened is you had a mass shooting, a couple of terroristic incidents against Muslims, and that's front page news, and the whole world, including the UN, take it up. But when was the last time, Rory, you heard about the UN having a special hearing in the Human Rights Commission about the slaughter of Christians, the destruction of churches? Look, the church Notre Dame that was destroyed by fire, that made the news not because it was a church, not because it was the most famous church in France, but because it was a historical landmark. Now, here's the news that most people don't know. There's over 100 churches that have been burned in France this year. Catholic churches. There's a church attacked and a priest physically knifed every 2 weeks in France. Their throats slit, stabbings, beatings. You see it in the New York Times? Do you see it in the Washington Post? Do you see it in CNN? No. It's not the narrative. So the narrative is, we have to be an inclusive, progressive, non-discriminatory society. When did Christians become the I don't care disposable group from around the world? When did that happen exactly? Because that's the reality of the way things are today. The reason I don't mention Jews in my answer to your question, Rory, is there aren't any Jews in those countries. They were driven out, run out, or slaughtered after the founding of the State of Israel. There's not a Jew in Jordan or Syria or Iraq. Well, there's a few in Iraq. And these African countries, they're all gone. They've already been killed or driven out. The Christians that stayed are now the ones being slaughtered by the Muslims. And why is it nobody cares?
Yeah, it really is mind-blowing. It really is. And I want to go to Dr. Branch. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank you very much for being here tonight. It's been really interesting. Up until probably the last 10 minutes, I had one question for you, but then everything turned towards the death of Christians, and it kind of makes my question seem kind of irrelevant.
Dr. Branch, you're cutting out. Now you're good.
I hope that you.
I don't know why it does that.
Good. We have talked many times on this show about the death of Christians and also the mass slaughterings that are going on. And, you had a prior administration that, when you had this Easter massacre in Sri Lanka, they didn't even call it, death of Christians. They said Easter worshipers. And, to me, you're absolutely right. It doesn't play into their narrative. You have Muslim congressmen now that are saying that their ancestors gave up their homes to help the Jews form their place in Israel, when in fact her ancestors were helping Hitler exterminate Jews. So, it's just a narrative that the left is just trying to make up, and people are just believing it. Now, the question that I had for you prior to you getting on this subject, because I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, I teach leadership to the doctorate level, and I was interested right off the bat. You said that you're going to speak to a high school this week regarding success. Then you started speaking on basketball and how you were in the NBA as far as in the sales and marketing and that. Every time that I look at success, I go to Coach Wooten from UCLA. He spoke a lot on success. He had his pyramid for success, and it says success is the peace of mind in which direct results of self-satisfaction and knowing that you made the effort to become the best that you are capable of becoming. And to me, listening to his motivational speaking, listening to his pyramid of success, listening to his TED Talks, he's very inspirational on success because he is one of the most successful basketball coaches in history. He had perfect seasons, but even though he had perfect seasons, people said that he wasn't successful because he did not he did not meet the point spread in some of his games. So he says you can win and still lose, and you can lose and still win. But it's just knowing that you made the effort to become the best that you could possibly be makes you successful. So when you're speaking to these youngsters this week in high school, what is your definition of success?
Well, thanks for the question, and you're about to be very surprised about my answer, and more so than you can imagine. As I said, when I worked in the NBA, I was there at the Clippers during the Bill Walton days, who became a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Walton said the most important person in his life was the man you just mentioned, John Wooden, who taught these young men to be men first and then basketball players. He taught them rules of life and ethics and personal achievement and teamwork and how they could be something they never imagined being. And to him, teaching somebody to be a better person was better than being a better basketball player. And I remember talking to Bill, and he used to tell John Wooden stories that he would call Coach Wooden all the time when he was in the NBA. And after he won MVP and after he'd won the title, he still would talk to Wooden. So it's interesting how these great teachers, whether they're somebody like you that teaches kids directly or teaches kids through sports or me making a speech, what I'm going to talk about this coming week is how I've got about 10 or 11 rules that I'm going to discuss that have been successful for me, but one of them is the basic concept of keep your own counsel. I have been so involved in media for so long, and I've seen so much lying and repositioning of the news, so that when I was a young man, or I was a child actually, I used to watch the news with my mom and dad, and there was a guy named Walter Cronkite who just read the news. And you knew, because it was Walter Cronkite, it was the truth. Now, granted, he probably had his biases too, and looking back in historical context, we know that to be true. But Today, the news is part what happened and part where you hear it, because the news outlets are news makers. For example, this Christian massacre stories that we've been talking about, some people call it terrorism. Some people call it a crazed gunman. Nobody seems to want to say it's an Islamic teaching to kill infidels during Ramadan, because if you do that, you go right to paradise, and you get the 72 virgins, and you get everything you wanted. You don't hear that on the news. It's a crazed person who's mentally ill.
Very, very true. Kevin, go ahead. Kevin, go ahead.
I'd love to hear about some of your insight relating to how your connections with Israel and all those institutions have been beneficial towards your career, and for you to elaborate on the how Israel is more important to Americans' interests than the Americans will ever know, because I think this is a very interesting topic.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. It's a great question. I did a show the other day on another, actually, television network. And the night before I did the show, I talked to a friend of mine who's a brigadier general in the Air Force in Israel. And I was talking to him about what's going on with Iran, because President Trump has been making a lot of noise about certain intelligence that Iran is about to strike back at the West, specifically Saudi Arabia as a proxy to the United States because of Trump's imposition of sanctions vis-a-vis the Iran nuclear deal, right? And what the general told me, and I can't quote him, but I can't quote his name, but I can tell you what he said. He's a friend of mine. Is that Iran blew up 3 tankers. And the reason they did it is to put fear into the tanker owners and the tanker owner countries that moving oil in the Persian Gulf is subject to Iranian interference. Okay? And then they sent drones into Saudi Arabia to blow up several pipelines. Now, these are acts of war. This isn't some minor terrorism, a crazed gunman in a gay nightclub shooting people in the name of Allah. This is an act of war perpetrated by a state, in this case Iran, that is the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world. And it's not even open to dispute, notwithstanding the fact that they sit on the Human Rights Commission, because the UN is just a clown car. But here's the bottom line. Trump is right. He's 100% right on this. I challenge anybody to dispute the facts that Bolton and Pompeo and Pence and Trump are talking about in regards to Iran. Iran is in a desperate financial condition because of the sanctions, because they are reinvigorating their nuclear capabilities. They are enhancing uranium well beyond what they are allowed to do, and as a result, they're on their way to a bomb. Trump knows it, CIA knows it, NSA knows it, and Israel knows it, because they've got people in Iran reporting it. So Israel is on the front lines, and their intelligence is talking to our intelligence, and I mean constantly. So when Trump says we have information, he's not just making this stuff up and tweeting about it at 4 a.m. He's literally sending a message: don't screw with us. Rouhani don't screw with us. Khomeini don't screw with us. Iran will cease to exist. God forbid you send one of those drones against the Abraham Lincoln that's in the Gulf right now. I've been on the Lincoln. I spent the night on that ship. I met the commander and the captain, and the XO, and I know what that ship's capable of. That ship alone and its carrier support group could destroy that country in 2 hours. I mean, there would be nothing left except villages in the countryside. And for the first time in a very long time, the United States has a commander-in-chief that is not kowtowing to terrorists. Remember,
exactly.
Obama flew billions of dollars into Tehran.
To Iran in cash.
In pallets of cash, untraceable, non-authorized by Congress, not authorized by the Treasury. He put it together in the middle of the night and flew the money there. And when they wanted more money, he sent more money. And what did he get in return? He got the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the biggest capitulation in world political history since 1938, when the Prime Minister of England returned from Berlin after meeting with Adolf Hitler and said, there will be peace in our time. And that idiot is the reason that Hitler invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, and started World War II that killed 100 million people. Why? Because when you appease evil, it encourages evil. And that is what the previous administration did with Iran. So when you have Israel, for example, what they did, a year ago when Bibi went on the national news and said, you're not going to believe what just happened.
Right.
The Mossad took tons, not pounds, tons of documents out of the nuclear program warehouse in Iran that proves they have more centrifuges than the United States knows. They have more enhancement of uranium than the United States knows. They have a secret bomb program in this place and this place and this place. They have a secret intercontinental ballistic missile program that the West doesn't know about. Here's all the evidence. Remember, he did that at the UN. I mean, it was a startling speech. So what happens? Trump believes him. And Western Europe goes, well, you know, we've just signed deals with Mercedes, and we want to make jets for them, and we want to put in pipelines, and maybe it's not as bad as the Israelis say. And besides, they haven't really threatened Western Europe, so maybe we can still make a deal.
Right.
And one guy stands up to them, which is Trump.
No, you're absolutely right.
And that's because of Israeli intelligence.
I do got to take a 1-minute commercial, and then I want to come back and get, I know Dr. Bussler and Mike Peters from New York have a lot of thoughts, so I'll be right back in 1 minute, everybody. Stay with us. Hello, everybody.
Everybody, this is Rory Sauter from The Rory Sauter Show. Show, coast to coast, border to border, worldwide. Listen to it in 23 different countries on nearly 70 online platforms. And everybody, if you miss any past clips, past episodes, or need 24/7 breaking news coverage, please visit our media site, USA.com. And remember, in the coming weeks, we will be having many notable people that will be doing their own shows on the network. And I can't wait to share all the details. I do want to go to
Dr. Bustler, go ahead. I know you have quite a few thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know we're running short on time here, and I've been listening very attentively to all the discussions and the interesting backgrounds. You know what comes to mind is behind a lot of some of the things we're talking about today is a change in values. It was mentioned before how people took more individual responsibility, and now, especially with the Democratic Party, we're leaning more towards social responsibility. In fact, the prior administration, their whole economic policy was really geared toward curing these perceived social injustices, taking care of other people, at least having the government take care of them rather than individual responsibility. And when you take a look at what really made the country great, I mean, as you know, I have an economics background, so I look at the economy, and I've mentioned on the show before, the U.S. went from the birth of a nation to the #1 economy in the world in about 150 years. Other countries were hundreds, in some cases thousands of years older. We did that because we had the principles of freedom, individual freedom, and with that came individual responsibility and a very limited role for government, which allowed for low rates of taxation. Those are the things I think that made our economy great, and everything the Democrats are proposing here, all their policies are all exactly opposite to those principles. They want to give us less freedom, less individual responsibility, larger role for government, and eventually higher rates of taxation for all of us. And I think the whole thing really starts with people being willing to accept individual responsibility and saying, it's not somebody else's fault if something doesn't go right for me. I made the decisions that resulted in me being here, and I've got to take individual responsibility. Getting back to some of those values, I think, will help fix a lot of the division even that we have within this country.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Mike Peters in New York, and Mike, before you, well, actually, Dr. Bustler, just because we're running short on time, just in case I don't get back to you, please tell everybody where they can find you.
So on Twitter, it's at MBUSLER, at MBustler, MBUSLER, and if you're on Facebook, search Funding Democracy. You see my columns, and you can follow me. Thank you.
Perfect. Mike Peters in New York, and I just want to say, before you go, Mike, before you talk, I just want to say, today it came out that there was a poll, and I'm looking at it right now. It said academic study shows that President Trump has made America less racist. I just wanted to throw that out there. Thought that was an interesting study that came out today. But Mike Peters, go ahead. Your thoughts on everything we've been talking about.
I'm really glad to hear that the discussion is really out there about what's going on, the truth with Iran, and it counters everything that the media has been putting out there. And sometimes, I mean, a lot of people, a lot of my friends, even up here, as I always say, they judge things that happen on the international stage based on how they live their lives here in America, and you can't do that. You can't even judge history through the eyes using today's lenses, through today's values, the way that we live today. So they consider that everything in Iran is just like here in the United States. And it's one big world, and it's Disneyland.
Hey, it's Jeff in High Def, and you're watching your guide to everything live, livemediaguide.com.